So it's the beginning of a new year, and our tendency or our compulsion is to set a whole bunch of goals that we're going to get done in the next 12 months. But there are two really important things to remember. One, January 1st isn't all that different than December 31st of the previous year. And two, you're the person that has to follow through with these goals. The first thing I want to underscore is that I think that you should set goals based on things that you want to achieve over the long term and then make a permanent part of your behavior. For example, a goal of doing more strength training should lead to a lifetime habit of staying healthier and more fit. A goal of losing a few pounds should lead to a habit of eating more healthy meals, trying to be aware of what you're bringing into your body, and overall having better performance in climbing. Goals that are, I want to do this by the end of this month, tend to be not as strong in motivation, and they don't tend to lead us toward big lifetime improvements. And so when we start to set these resolutions, there are four main pitfalls that we want to pay attention to. The first pitfall that people run into almost every New Year's resolution is setting too big a goal. We love the idea of setting a gigantic goal. I'm going to go send the free rider this year. And the number of people that contact our coaching team about, I want to prep specifically for free rider is unbelievable. But many of those people haven't done the little pieces. And so when we set a big goal like that, the most important thing is to think of that goal as a long-term achievement and then figure out what the chunks are. What are the pieces that go into that? If you're not a granite climber, if you don't climb 512, if you don't climb regularly, if you've never climbed multi-pitch stuff, having the free rider as a goal is probably not something that's going to happen this year. You could instead say, this year I'm going to start climbing on granite. I'm going to do it this many days per week. I want to get to where I can climb 512 regularly. I want to do a multi-pitch route on April 15th. But you've really got to think in realistic steps. And instead of setting these huge unrealistic things, we want to set chunked out realistic goals that we can achieve. The second big pitfall of resolutions tends to be a lack of specificity. A lot of people will say like, oh, I want to start exercising more, or I want to lose a little bit of weight, or I want to climb more. But we need to be very specific in order to keep our motivation at the proper level. Specifics would be, I want to exercise at least 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week, or I want to lose 2 pounds by the end of February. You have to be really clear with yourself, because 2 months from now or 3 months from now, you probably will have forgotten the general feel of this resolution. And unless you have some tangible numbers to go after and some really specific things you want to have happen, you're probably not going to stay motivated for it. And so when we set a resolution, we need to be very specific in what we want to have happen. The third big issue with resolutions is poor planning. If we just have a general idea what we want to have happen, we probably aren't going to make it happen. And so when we plan things out, we want to plan not only if things go well, but if things don't go well. What are the specific things that might happen as I approach my goals, and what am I going to do when that happens? For example, if one of my goals is to drink more water, I am going to do X if I don't have water with me. If my goal is to drink less alcohol and I go to a party, what am I going to do when I'm handed a beer? Having ideas exactly what's going to happen as we approach those goals is really important. I read a book a few years ago, and it was really interesting. They were talking about the invasion of bin Laden's compound in Pakistan and the preparation that the special forces went through in going into that invasion. And one of the things they did is they built a replica of the compound, and then they even went and they paid attention to satellite imagery. Do the doors open in or out? What types of handles are likely going to be on these doors? What are the layouts of these houses normally? And they tried to get as much information as they possibly could so that when their mission hit some kind of roadblock, they were able to continue the mission without panicking. And that's the same thing that we've got to do. All of the things we could have possibly happen need to be addressed ahead of time before we get to that point and end up panicking when something bad happens. Another issue with poor planning is setting what are called avoidance goals. Lots of people say, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this, and they have to continue to not do that thing every day, all day long. For example, if my goal is to stop eating sugar, I have to be aware of every single thing that's going in my mouth at all times and always be thinking about avoiding sugar. Now, if instead I did what would be called an approach goal, like I'm going to drink more water, I can do that at any time. And if my goal was to drink 2 liters of water a day, even the moment before I go to bed, I can still finish out that goal. And that approach goal is something that I can grab hold of, attack, and be finished with for the day. And those are much easier goals to start with. And so when you start to set your goals, having these things that you're approaching are much, much more important than things that you're trying to avoid. Eventually, avoidance goals can come into it once you're good at the skill. But until then, everything that you set as a goal for your New Year's resolution should be something you're approaching. The final pitfall that we see really commonly with our athletes and with people setting New Year's resolutions is a lack of accountability. If you just sort of have an idea and you're like, yeah, maybe I want to try to climb a bunch of 512s this year, but you don't share it with anybody and you don't write it down and you don't make it a concrete thing in your life, you tend not to be accountable for those things. But if you say, honey, I want to try to go out and send 25 512s this year. Here's my list. I'm taping it to the refrigerator. Let's talk about it once a month. There's a chance that you're going to have some support and some accountability from your partner on there. We can do it via social media. We can do it via a challenge group. We can do it via betting with a friend. When you have an accountability partner, a friend, a coach, a training partner, and you say, I want to do this and this and this, that person is going to be a lot more likely than you to be able to keep taking this 10,000 foot perspective and say, hey, how is that goal coming? You talked to me about this a month ago. Have you progressed on it? And if it's just you and your goal and your brain, there's a really good chance that that thing's going to fall away as soon as life gets complicated. When we set New Year's resolutions, we're setting ourselves up to be better than we were last year. The most important thing is to understand that you're not a superhero. You're going to end up having setbacks. You're going to have challenges. You're going to lack motivation. And so setting achievable, chunked out small goals and sharing them with a coach or training partner is the way we're going to get these things done.